Hello and welcome back to Wartorn Creative. I'm Brad, joined by Gavin and Jared. We're going over weapons part 2. First thing, twin linked. What is happening?
All right, so in the past, we've seen a lot of, twin linking is just re-roll all your failed hits.
Yep.
In shooting phase, or I guess there weren't any twin link melee weapons. That'd be goofy.
No.
I'm gonna take these two swords and I'm gonna forge them together.
Chain swords.
Instead of that, we now just double the amount of attacks that we're getting with the weapon. So we were given the example of the heavy bolter, which has historically been 3 shots, and we're given the twin heavy bolter profile, which has 6 shots instead of 3. I mean, statistically, should be. I think the reroll is actually a little bit better. But it depends on the ballistic skill of whatever the model is shooting.
Yeah.
I've always preferred twin linked over more shots.
And more DACA.
More DACA. You're an orc player now, so I understand why you feel that way.
I feel like it can go either way, and it's going to depend on the player. Like for me, I always felt like I didn't really care for the reroll, and I would have rather had
more shots.
Yeah, and had more.
Yeah,
shots.
I really do think that's going to be an army by army kind of experience.
Yeah.
Like I tend to play a little more on the like big monster side than like hordes.
Yeah.
So it's always been quality of shots over quantity. Personally, I'm like, I'm not unhappy about it. It's exciting, but you know. I don't know how it's going to affect my big boys.
I think this change is good because in 7th edition, their explanation to explain twin linked is like, oh, the 2 guns on your model, it's twin linked because
pouring out twice as much shots.
So there's a chance for one of those to hit.
Likely to hit.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
But now it just makes more straightforward sense. Oh, it's 2 guns, 2 shots.
Yeah,
it's very
does make a lot more sense.
Makes it easier for new players to latch that into.
I like it for my bikes because now I have a little bit better of an option to not have to upgrade to like a scatter laser because I'm getting the same amount of shots.
You're going
out
to do
of
that anyways.
I mean,
Yeah, you're going to.
But now you got to outweigh it where it's like, okay, do you want range or do you want more shots with like Blade Storm? You know,
Right. That's a good point. That is a good point. Blade Storm, we don't know if it's changing at all or what it's going to do, but it could be. It's already pretty powerful in 7th. It could continue to be powerful in 8th.
I will want to pick up a DACA jet at some point.
Oh my goodness, DACA jets.
18 shots now.
Oh my god.
So speaking of
Yeah, it's pretty good.
everything, twice as many shots. What about twice as many guns?
Oh yeah, they introduced the new rules for Combi Weapons. Now in 7th edition, it was Combi Weapons where you'd pay 10 points and you get your main gun and you have an auxiliary option, which for Space Marines and Orcs, that's usually like a Plasma or Rocket or a Melta or Flamer. Now in 8th edition, it's just double the fun. You just get to be able to shoot them all whenever.
And it's all worth mentioning that in 7th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, you could only shoot those weapons, those bonus weapons, once per game.
So it was like
they're
one
all
and
one-hit
done.
wonders.
Yeah, and you've had a lot of like Space Marines that would just, when they pile on the grav, they would take, I'll slap in another Combi grav for my sergeant. But once you did it, he was just back to using a bolter, and it didn't really feel that great. Granted, grav was busted. But now in the new edition, they have the mindset of you can either shoot both all the time. It's not just once per game. You can either shoot both at a -1 hit modifier or one of them at full ballistic skill, which is, in my opinion, that's better because combi scorches are going to be fantastic. So mega.
Well, it just also means your stern guard squads.
Yeah.
And back in the day when I was playing Dark Angels, one of my favorite things to do was have a veteran squad with as many plasma guns and combi plasmas as possible in a drop pod, and I just drop it near the scariest elite infantry thing on the table, and then unload everything and lose a few models to plasma. But ideally I would take out the problem that I was worried about. Right. And if I didn't, it was just like, well, you guys are dead, and you can't do anything.
Your job is done now.
Yeah.
And now that you can use them multiple times per game.
Yeah.
So we're going to see the squads, and so like Chosen for Chaos.
Oh yeah.
Stern
the
Guard
Terminators.
veterans, all these stuff. Yeah, Terminators.
Chaos Terminators are really good now.
We're going to start seeing all these things that had combi weapons as options that people kind of just took just because.
Yeah.
All of a sudden becoming a lot stronger. I think specifically, like you said, Chaos Terminators. I think our Chaos buddies
They
are
get
gonna
more use
start
now,
seeing
especially
a lot more
since
use.
Terminators across the board are getting the 2 wound buff.
Yeah.
So another thing that I kind of want to talk about is like the Melta gun. We haven't really seen anything with like a Melta yet.
Yes,
in weapons, and the ability says if the target is within half range of the weapon, roll 2 dice when inflicting damage.
Yep.
When it
So for
you're
Melta,
discarding the lowest.
so in Melta, they still want to retain its ability as being an anti-tank
Right.
weapon. So the strength is obviously going to be high, at least equal to most vehicles. I think a couple of transports that we've seen have been like toughness 5 at the lowest, but like dreadnoughts and everything above that has been
Generally toughness 8.
Toughness 8. So it's going to be wounding on 4s, which is acceptable. But the -4 modifier is fantastic because that just straight up bypasses the 3-up armor saves that we're seeing a lot on these vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
So it's still a guaranteed, like once you get that 4-up, you get that guaranteed D6. But instead of doing in 7th edition with the penetration where Melta had to play at that half distance, it's now changed where it's just modifying the damage, in which you roll 2d6 and picking the highest for how much damage you inflict onto the target.
Which is going to be, that 2d6 is going to be so useful.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the days of, in 7th with Ordnance, being able to roll 2 dice and pick the highest for armor pen was always super helpful. Because you always have that one dud dice you roll.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, and it's a 1.
And it's in the new edition, I expect it to be the anti-tank killer, but it's also going to be probably a really good hero hunter kind of deal. You're going to have people deep striking or popping out of vehicles to snipe that hero, get in range of that character. That's because of the new rules, you can't really shoot at them.
We've talked about this a few times now in our past videos, but I think multi-meltas are really going to be really scary.
Super good.
In dev squads with full multi-meltas.
Yeah,
just
full multi-meltas
hunting.
with only -1 modifier to hit,
That's
it's
gonna be pretty scary.
Pretty good.
So we talked about how there's no templates or anything anymore. So we got a little bit more info on blasts. So how are blasts going to work now?
So they're a lot more like how they're working in Age of Sigmar, which is we've gotten rid of the template entirely. We've mentioned this, I think, in Weapon Part 1 with the Flamers, where we saw Flamers doing D3 auto hits.
That's D6 auto.
Oh, it's D6 auto hits, that's right. We're having something very similar where with Blast, we're seeing D6 or D3, depending on the weapon.
Shots.
Shots.
Yes. And you can see that on the battle cannon profile.
Yeah, which is exciting. It's great that they showed the battle cannon. It's such a staple for the Astra Militarum and even Knights.
Yeah. It's going to be pretty good. That rapid battle fire cannon will probably be heavy 2d6, which is pretty terrifying.
That's pretty terrifying. Especially with, I guess we'll get into this more with command points. But
Yeah. But it answered a lot of questions. One big question that we talked about once before, which is ordnance and things. Like, that's not on the battle cannon anymore. They used to be on the battle cannon.
Okay.
And that was if you shot that cannon, everything else that the vehicle had was snap shooting.
So
and
all
you
of
can't-
those like bolters that you'd put on the side of your Lehman Russes, there was no point.
Yeah, no
I
point.
mean, unless you just needed to get a bunch of extra shots
But-
out at bad.
But I think now that since the heavy rule is the thing now, and they've made it clear that it is going to affect vehicles unless there's some exception to this.
It'll probably be similar to the heavy rule currently
Yeah.
on certain vehicles.
Yeah, so -1 to hit. So,
Yeah.
but they're going to be able to fire all their guns to
Right.
full effect. It simulates a lot of the randomness of what explosions are and like shooting cannon fire and all that stuff. We'll have to see in execution how good that is, whether that's good
Right.
or bad, because getting a direct hit on a pie plate, like a 5-incher, is really good. Because you'll hit the whole unit usually if somebody positions.
I also
poorly.
found it's pretty rare, even when I was back when I was playing, harkening back to a game I played with my knights, where everything is pie plate pretty much, every main weapon, against demons, which was just a huge horde army.
Yeah.
I found that even when I got direct hits, it was rare that I got over like 7 or more hits, unless they were really bunched up.
Yeah, I feel like this will be less punishing. My on paper armchair designer viewpoint is it'll probably be less punishing against horde units because again, damage is allocated by the model, as we've interpreted with previous articles. So it's going to be D3 damage to models that take the wounds,
Right.
who fail
So
the saves.
any single wound models, don't even need to bother rolling the damage
So
because you know they're dead.
You still would kind of dump it on like elite units because it's still got a -2 modifier, which is pretty good because that'll put a Terminator at a 4-up save or a Space Marine at a 5-up save.
Yeah.
So it's still pretty dangerous against the units, but we don't no longer have that binary, oh, I just wound you on 2s, just go ahead and take them off the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Like everything, there's going to be like, positive and negatives to it. But then like, you don't have to worry about anything scattering. So you're at least going to hit something, right? Rather than like, oh, I'm missing everything.
Yeah, and
just
I got to
based on
say that is one of the worst feelings. And when you have a bad game where your just scatter dice is not helping you, especially when it's an important weapon that you've spent a lot of points in your list to get in there, and it's just your bad rolling that makes it not go anywhere. It's not. It's landing in the middle of a field and not anywhere.
It just makes me sad that one time when I fought our guardsman player, Salim, he fired his battle cannon at my knobs, and it scattered and killed his entire
That's right.
infantry squad.
Onto his infantry squad.
It's amazing. Man.
But we won't ever have that again. It makes me sad.
Well, that about does it for the weapons part 2. Make sure you like the video, comment below what you like, what you'd like to see, subscribe. Coming up next is going to be data sheets. See you then.